My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my review of Better Call Saul Season 3, and this will be a spoiler-filled review, so if you haven't seen it, go and watch it, then come back and watch this review because I will be going in depth. Now, Better Call Saul Season 1 didn't really impress me all too much, but Season 2 was a huge improvement. So I was hoping that this season would continue that trend, and thankfully it does. This is yet another great season of television, and I know I said it in my review for Season 2, but I'll say it again here. This show is less like Breaking Bad and more like BoJack Horseman. You're just watching this guy do awful things time and time again, and you're just waiting for everything to eventually catch up to him. And we do get lots of that in this season. But I do want to say that I love how this season begins immediately after the cliffhanger of Season 2. Chuck records Jimmy, and what happens after that? Jimmy helps Chuck take down all of his things, and they bond for like a solid minute before Chuck just resorts to his typical douchebag self. And I do like that. But I did think the first episode was going to revolve on the fallout from Chuck, but instead it focuses more on one of the military guys from Season 2 that Jimmy also lied to, and I really loved this small moment between them because it just shows that a small throwaway moment in Season 2 still affected someone and can still come back to bite Jimmy in the ass. So you have no idea what's going to come back later in the show. And that just keeps you on edge, like what's going to happen now? But then we do get to the fallout from Chuck, and when Jimmy finds out, it is legitimately pretty emotional. Like you can just see how deeply it hurts Jimmy. That said though, the second Ernesto found out and he told Kim, I'm just like, yeah, I don't buy this. I don't buy this for 1 second. This is all part of Chuck's plan. And sure enough, I was correct. In fact, I predicted his plan spot on. And I'm not complaining about that actually. In fact, that's a huge positive. I'm not like, oh, this show is predictable. It's garbage. No. It just shows you how strong they've written the characters and how consistently they've acted. So it actually makes me like the show even more. And the fact that Chuck knew that he was putting Ernesto in this situation and still fires him just shows just how big of a shithead Chuck is. Like, he just loses people like they're some kind of prop. And it just shows you that he's no better than Jimmy. Everything he says about him is correct, but he has no bit of self-awareness towards his own flaws. So anyways, when Jimmy did go to Chuck's place and lose it and he destroyed the tape, I was just like, damn it, Jimmy. And I did find it funny how Chuck's just like, I know my brother. He'll show up at night. And then Jimmy just starts pounding on the door. That was a really funny scene. But I also found the scene where Jimmy's just like, you destroyed our family for this, had so much weight behind it. And when he told Chuck that one day he'll die alone, I think even Chuck knew he was right, and it stung him a little bit. And just to see Jimmy on the other side of the court where he's arrested and in jail, you just really feel like he's hit rock bottom. And I just love the fact that Kim is still there for him. She knows that he screws up time and time again, but she really does care for him. And when Jimmy's just like, this guy? Seriously? Even he recognizes that he doesn't deserve her. And there is some genuine heart there. And I just hate Chuck more and more each time I see him. Like, even just in a small meeting before the trial, well, they thought Jimmy would have to pay Chuck this much, and they were off by $2, and he corrected on them. Like, he can't even let $2 go. Next episode begins with a flashback, and we see how Jimmy lets Chuck and Rebecca have a moment, but then Chuck starts freaking out about her cell phone, and he's not saying the stuff he should say. You know, you can just see that he really is a weak, cowardly man, or for lack of a better term, completely ballless. And okay, in my review for the first season, I complained about Chuck's electromagnetic sensitivity because it just felt so random. It just felt like something out of the blue. But what they've done with it since then, and how you see that Chuck legitimately needs someone in his life to take care of him, and how it's really just a manifestation of his hatred for Jimmy. The way they've used it since then is just so expertly done, so I retroactively take back that complaint from season 1. Just at the time, I couldn't see where they were going with it. But anyways, I do love how Howard points out to Chuck that Chuck should have locked up the documents. You know, Jimmy did everything he did, and he's wrong for doing so. But Chuck did make it super easy for him. And I like how Howard puts some of the responsibility onto him. But my favorite scene this entire season is this one small moment when Kim has Howard on the witness stand and she's asking him why they didn't hire Jimmy, and Howard's like, well, we didn't want to appeal like, well, you know, nepotism or whatever. And Kim's like, oh, okay, so in HHM, who's the other Hamlin? And he's just like, my dad. Oh, it's such a perfect moment. Just, I absolutely love that. But the way the rest of the episode plays out, with Jimmy getting Rebecca there, with Hugh putting the battery in Chuck's pocket, it was all just delivered absolutely perfectly. And what I think makes it even better is that Jimmy got no bit of satisfaction from it. You can tell that he wasn't happy to do this, but he was left with no other choice. And Chuck's freakout scene, just brilliantly acted. The fact that the actor didn't get nominated for that is a complete joke. Like, it's a very satisfying scene to see someone who tries to appeal like this well, noble guy who you know is a dope egg underneath to just lose his cool like that. It's satisfying, without a doubt. But there is an emotional undertone to it. That when he's not pretending to be the guy who he is, he has nothing but a deep, deep hatred for his brother. And he's just showcasing that to the world in this moment. And just his sudden realization that he lost his cool is just so perfect. And I even love the scene in the next episode when Rebecca tries to get Jimmy to help Chuck. And Jimmy's just like, no, I'm done. I thought it was very satisfying to see. And then we see the Saul Goodman commercial, and I did find it to be very funny. But anyways, I do love though how after time has passed, Jimmy just isn't happy with what happened with Chuck. He wants to do more to screw him over. Well, we see that Kim is truly conflicted about it. And it really does highlight the differences between the two of them. And then also in Jimmy's story this season, you do understand his struggle of how he's doing community service, but he's also trying to get rid of his commercial time, and also how he's trying to have a job to make a living, and how he's just struggling. You really do feel that. And I would love to be on Team Jimmy against the music store people, because they really did get a great deal for the first free commercial, which did help their business, and then they didn't follow through on their end of the deal. But that said, Jimmy keeps overcharging people a significant degree. It's not just a couple hundred, it's a few, like $4,000-$5,000 more than what it should be. So as much as I want to be on Jimmy's side, I just can't. And that really does sum up this show very well. You understand why Jimmy's doing what he's doing, and you feel his frustration, and you wish the people he was dealing with were better. But at the end of the day, Jimmy still is in the wrong. Like even with the community service guard, like he's doing nothing wrong. Jimmy's on his phone, he wants to lie down, the other guy's trying to get out of it, and Jimmy's trying to shame him and make him feel like he's doing a bad job. Look, I used to be a supervisor for a cleaning company, and there's nothing worse when someone's supposed to be cleaning and they keep going on their phone time and time again. So I'm completely on Team Community Service Guard. And I do love how he goes to Howard about the settlement or whatever, and Howard just puts him in his place. And he's just done with Jimmy's shit. And it was very satisfying to see as well. Because what Jimmy does next, I just think is absolutely atrocious. Like, he's done some bad things already, but I don't know, like, everything he does to Irene this season, it just makes me angry. Like, what a piece of shit. Like, I just hated him. Like, that's crossing a line. Like, making, like, this old lady who just wants to enjoy the rest of her life and just creating drama and conflict within her life that's completely unneeded. And sure, he eventually corrects it, but the fact that he was willing to do that, such a despicable person. But then anyways, then we've got this great conflict between Howard and Chuck, and how we see that Chuck is willing to fuck over even Howard. And it just shows you how awful he is. It isn't just towards Jimmy, it's towards everyone. And Howard sees his friend for who he truly is. Like, after everything he did for him, being by his side during that trial, Chuck still betrayed him. And the fact that Howard pays from his own bank account just makes it sting all the more. And then we do get this one final scene between Chuck and Jimmy, and I do like the writing of this scene, as Chuck once again says nothing but the truth about Jimmy. But once again, he also fails to see how hypocritical and how much of a liar and awful person he is. And that one line where he tells Jimmy, "The truth is, you just never mattered all that much to me." Yeah, that stings. And then we just see Chuck's relapse from that point. So, Chuck doesn't have his business anymore. He doesn't have any friends. He doesn't have Jimmy. So, he kills himself, and I don't know. You kind of get how I got to that point, but it still feels tragic. Even the fact that he keeps pushing over the lantern, he keeps pushing people away, and eventually it all erupts in flames. Very symbolic. But just the fact that he was willing to die over trying to fix things with Jimmy. He was willing to die over retiring. Just everything. He was willing to die. Like, it just shows you that it's very complex, but yes. And then we got Kim's car accident, which made me just be like, oh shit, this really sucks for her. I'm curious to see what happens to her next season, but it is nice to see her to relax for once. And then we get Mike's story, and once again, I love how it takes place right after the end of season 2, where he then gets away from that location, he takes apart the car, which I found very satisfying, and then we see Lloyd for like 2 minutes from Yellowstone. And I'm just like, oh, that's Lloyd, but then he disappears. And then we see the chicken restaurant, and I'm just like, Gus is back, baby. And I love how they hide his face and how they build him up, and then we eventually see him, and I think he is such a great character. And then we also get some really tense stuff with Nacho as he tries to poison Hector, and I love how he broke the AC to cover his threat. I do think it's curious that Gus ended up saving Hector, but yeah, like right now it just feels like all of that stuff is all build up, and I'm still waiting for the payoff. Now let's talk about the cast, first with Bob Odenkirk, who I just think does a fantastic job. I should have said this in my last review, but one thing that really dawned on me in this season is that Jimmy didn't become the person he is from watching his dad, who had a big heart. No, Jimmy became the way he is by watching the people who took advantage of his dad. And how well that is shown here, I just think is absolutely perfect. I think Bob Odenkirk brings so many different layers to this character, where there's a part of you that feels bad for him, that sympathizes with him, but there's also a part of you that's just frustrated with him and thinks that he deserves everything that's coming his way. And the fact that he's able to walk that fine line is incredibly impressive. But I think the standout this season is Michael McKean. Like I said, Chuck's freakout in the courtroom is absolutely phenomenal acting. He just brings so much to this character, and it's really an incredible performance. You also got Rhea Seehorn, who I think does such a great job. You got Giancarlo Esposito, and I do love Gus as a character. Like, the way that he treats his staff after that one incident and the way that he tells Mike that he wouldn't take money from his family. It's just nice that this character's back, and I think he plays him so perfectly. You also got Patrick Fabian as Harold, who I'm going to go ahead and say is the most underrated actor in this entire show. He is so great here. You got Jonathan Banks, who is once again great, and I love his partnership with Jimmy. It's a one for you, one for me kind of relationship. And that one scene where he keeps Chuck away by using the drill was really funny. Michael Mando is really good. Kerry Condon's good. And then I also found Mark Margolis is really great as Hector. He's just so easy to hate. He's really a despicable person. And I also do want to mention that two things I do like is that I've been trying to figure out what year this takes place in, and there might have been some clear indicators beforehand. They could have even said it at a certain point, but then they said at the end 2003, so it's nice to get that answer. And I actually just saw the movie Fall in theaters, and there's an episode called Fall, so I just thought it was funny that I watched two things called Fall in a 24-hour span of time. But despite all my positives, I do have a few negatives. Probably the biggest one is the fact that the first half of this season feels like it has all the meat of it. Like the second half is still really good, but it's just much less eventful. And I also said that I love the writing in the last scene between Jimmy and Chuck, and I get the purpose of it. That's going to be the last encounter and just how much Jimmy was devastated in that moment. But I don't like the fact that scene exists, because to have Jimmy go back to him feels like a backtrack. And I know him backtracking is part of his character, but I really thought this should have been left as definitive. You know, even without it, I still think the point comes across. And then my other negative is the same complaint I had last season, but as much as I know that all the Nacho and Hector and Gus and Mike stuff is all built up for now, it still feels totally disconnected. Until I see where they connect with Jimmy's story and how everything goes down, it does feel like two different stories, and it doesn't always click. Like, you watch a show like Arcane and you've got Jinx and Vi and Selko's storyline and Jason Victor's and just all this stuff that's going on, but it really does come together, and it does feel like one cohesive story. While this feels like two very distinct stories that I'm still waiting to come together. And when we get to that point, I might take back this negative like I did with Chuck's electromagnetic sensitivity. But for now, that's the way it is. But look, this is another great season of television. I love just how character driven it is and how there's so much complexities on display. Whether it's a relationship between Jimmy and Chuck, or Jimmy and Kim, or Howard and Chuck. Just there's so much depth and nuance on display, and it's so brilliantly handled. There's so many great tense moments. There's so many moments where I'm just truly invested, and I can't wait to see where this show goes next. I'm going to go ahead and give Better Call Saul Season 3 an 8 out of 10. Okay, have you seen Better Call Saul Season 3? What did you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe. Stay tuned for some more videos soon, and Gavin